Hello, my name is Neha Kulshresht. I work as an assistant professor in Indian Sign Language Research and Training Center. Today my friend Sachin Singh and I am going to talk about the module Syntax of Sign Language. In this module, we'll explore the various phrasal constituents and constructs of sign language, and also we'll introduce you to the basic phrasal constituents, grammatical categories, sentence types, and characteristic grammatical phenomenon in Indian Sign Language. My name is Sachin Singh. I work in ISLA TC, Indian Sign Language Research and Training Center, as an instructor. In this unit, we'll explore phrasal and clausal constructions and its constituents in the Indian Sign Language in particular. Further, verb agreement, classifier incorporation, and word order in Indian Sign Language are also examined. First, we'll talk about the phrasal structure and its constituents, under which we are going to talk about determiner phrase, which will henceforth be called as DP. In the sign language literature, it has been argued that the heads of determiner phrase are usually associated with localization, index, and possessive signs. In Unit 3, we study that localization and indexing, although similar in articulatory terms, they are very different. Localization introduces new referent into a discourse, while index refers to the already introduced referent in the discourse. In other words, localization is an indefinite marker, while the index is a definite one. Moreover, we have also seen that index has demonstrative function too. Since demonstrative has deictic reading, index has inherent deictic reading in it. However, it is not the case that each and every instance of an index has necessarily deictic as well, apart from its referential reading. In Indian Sign Language, the relationship between the possessor and the possessed is shown by an index-like sign with a different hand shape, labeled as POSS. It is articulated between the possessor and the possessed. Interestingly, in kinship relations and inalienable possession, POSS is optional, and also in the cases where the relationship between the possessor and the possessed can be recovered from the context. For example, Ram's younger brother cried yesterday. Here, Ram is used with a possessive pronoun. The second example would be, his brother cried yesterday, where POSS is not required. The third example is, Ram's mobile phone is old. Here we can simply sign Ram mobile phone old. The next we'll talk about adjective phrase. In Indian Sign Language, adjectives are either lexical or articulated as part of the noun sign. Both attributive as well as predicative adjectives are observed. First example is shirt red, which could mean two things. A shirt is red or a red shirt. The next example is red shirt, where it could only mean a or the red shirt. It cannot have a predicative meaning. The attributive adjective is either prenominal or postnominal, respectively. On the other hand, the predicative adjective is always postnominal. However, the predicative adjective is preverbal in the presence of a possessive have. For example, I have a red car, where I, red car, have is signed. But a red book is old, where book, red, it, old is signed. Next, we'll talk about numeral or quantifier phrase. You can recall that numeral and quantifiers are in complementary distribution in Indian Sign Language. With numerals more than one, the position of the numeral is strictly postnominal. However, the numeral 1, O-N-E, the number may itself precede or follow the noun. For example, he gave 2 books to him. Or, I gave him a bag and a book. In the sentence where 1, which is I gave him a bag and a book, 1 comes before book and bag and can also come after book and bag. But in the sentence, he gave 2 books to him, the number 2 will always come after the book. In cases where a noun is modified by a numeral and an adjective, the position of the numeral more than one is strictly postnominal. For example, I gave 2 red books to you. Next, we are going to talk about the negative phrase, negation. In Indian Sign Language, negation is either manually signed or with a head shake. The negative element is often associated with a distinct facial expression, which is pursed lips with the lower lip slightly pushed forward, forming filtral lines in the face. Although the head shake is optional with manual negators, it suffices to negate the proposition. For example, understand with a head shake, which means I did not understand. The second sentence would be, don't beat me, where beat and then negative imperative comes. The next sentence is, he does not like dog, not comes at the end. Dharmesh has not seen Uday, where not comes at the end. And who did not dance beautifully, where not comes before the WH question. Apart from the clause final occurrence, negation also occurs at the clause initial position in reply to the request. For example, would you like to drink tea? No, I don't drink tea. Here, no comes clause initially. We We discussed different phrasal structures. Now we're going to discuss the sentence types. In general, there are three basic types of sentences: declaratives, interrogative, and imperative. Imperative includes both the command and the request in Indian Sign Language. In all these types of sentences, the signer distinguishes one from another with the use of different expressions. In Indian Sign Language, there is no specific expression associated with declaratives. Rather, this lack of specific expression indicates that the sentence is a declarative statement. On the other hand, interrogatives are marked with distinct expressions. Yes-no questions is distinguished from WH questions through the expression and the use of the WH word. In the yes-no question, the word order of the sentence is the same as in the declarative, but with a distinct expression. The basic expression associated with it is the relative chin up from the immediate sign. An Indian Sign Language WH sign is a composite sign consisting of a noun and a sign, generally labeled as WH sign or particle, in association with an expression. For example, where is a compound of place and WH sign. So if we have to sign where, we'll first sign place and then we'll use the general WH sign. WH question word is primarily a double-handed symmetric sign and often undergoes weak drop, resulting in a one-handed sign. The suppletive form of the sign is seen in diurnal when, which differs from the other WH question in its manual articulation as well as in the expression. The rhetorical question is the same as the WH question. In Indian Sign Language, WH questions is strictly clause final. Now we're going to see the examples of few of the sentence types. The first is mother sleep, that is, mother is sleeping. This is a simple declarative sentence. Now, with respect to yes-no questions, we'll ask, is mother sleeping? The sentence structure would be same, that is, mother sleep, but there would be a non-manual marker to mark yes-no question. The third would be tag question. Would you like to have tea? Would you? In this, it can be signed as you, T, you, where non-manual expressions will mark the tag question. The last is, what is your name? Which is a WH question. It will be signed as your name, WH particle, with the non-manual marker. In Indian Sign Language, coordination of the nouns is carried out by handshape V, W and arc. In Indian Sign Language, coordination of the nouns is carried out by handshape V, W and arc for the dual, trial and plural conjunct morphemes respectively. The conjunct morpheme immediately follows the nouns to be conjuncted. The sentential coordination is carried out by the articulation of the two sentences with the sentence break as shown by the long pause. So, a sentence like Ram and Sita walked yesterday, the sentence would be yesterday Ram Sita walk Ram Sita yesterday walk. The next sentence is Uday cleaned the room and washed the clothes himself. Now here the sign would be Uday, room clean, then pause, clothes wash. In conditional clause, there is no word sign to mark that a clause is a conditional. The conditional clause is articulated first and has an expression of raised brow and head forward accompanying the final sign of the conditional clause. It is followed by the result clause, which has an expression of head back. For example, if Sibaji comes, Uday will go to office. So, the sign would be like Sibaji come, Uday office go. The come would have a non-manual marker to mark condition. Next, we are going to talk about verb agreement. You may recall our discussion of verbs in Indian Sign Language and typology of the verbs on the basis of verb agreement, that is, directional or spatial displacement of the verb, sign between onset and offset of the verb's path movement. In Indian Sign Language, the phonological manifestation of verb agreement can be shown in the following way. For example, first category is change in direction of path movement. So for example, one-handed sign would be climb, come. Two-handed symmetric handshake would be exchange or give. Two-handed asymmetric handshake would be help. The second category is change in orientation. So for a one-handed sign is teach. The third category is change in direction. So one-handed sign would be bring or buy. Two-handed symmetric handshake would be criticize or invite. And two-handed asymmetric handshake would be question. The next category is path movement and orientation. So one-handed sign is get or pay. Two-handed symmetric handshakes would be welcome. In addition to these mechanisms to manifest verb agreement in agreeing verbs, plain verbs in Indian Sign Language show verb agreement with the clause final sign go, which can be transcribed as dir. So for example, I ran to the park, where you locate the sign for the park first, and then the sign for I, and then you can sign run which would be in the direction of the park. This will express the meaning I ran to the park. In sign language literature, verb agreement has received variety of treatment under various formulations. So Stokey, Castelline and Kronberg in 1965 argued in favor of verbal inflection for personal reference. Klima and Belugi 1979 and Padden in 1983-88 regarded it as first person, second person and third person. So 1P, 2P and 3P. With reference to Indian Sign Language, Hidam in 2010 and 2014 favored pronominal analysis, whereas Sinha in 2003 analyzed it as pronominal arguments initially. Sinha in 2013 analyzed it as theta markers and as the agreement morphemes with linguistic features. The semantic approach of Friedman in 1975, Shepard, Kegg in 1985, Boss 1998 favored that a fixation on the verb is determined by the spatial thematic role of the arguments. Zishan in 2000 described it as agent or affectee, or defines the course of movement for Indian Sign Language in the tradition of gestural approach to verb agreement. Liddell in 2003 regards verb agreement is a gestural component of a sign since no grammatical category is involved in it. Now we'll talk about classifier incorporation. In linguistics, one of the senses of the term incorporation refers to those structures where an element is attached with another element, yielding a complex word. In the sign language literature, the term classifier incorporation is widely used to describe the phenomenon in which a verb of motion and location is articulated with a classificatory handshape that assumes the physical properties of the reference size, shape, and textural appearance. For example, the sentence is, "You put a mark on the table." Here, the sign would be U, classifier flat surface for table, classifier handle mug, and then classifier handle put. This will achieve the sentence, "You put a mark on the table." In Indian Sign Language, signer, however, has a choice to construct a sentence representing the verb of motion and location with a lexical sign without classifier handshape. So for example, they give a mark to her. Here, you may not use the classifier handle mark and use the natural sign for give. In Indian Sign Language, signer, however, has a choice to construct a sentence without a classifier handshape. So for example, they give a mug to her. In this, they, her, one mug and give can achieve they give a mug to her, where the handle mark classifier for the mug is not required. It is assumed that the choice of such two constructions, with and without incorporation, is motivated by discourse pragmatic environment. Next, we are going to talk about the word order. With respect to the transitivity and the typology of Indian Sign Language verb, it is observed that of the verb are always preverbal. However, it is also found that the order amongst these arguments is relatively free. So, for example, in a sentence like Ram likes Sita, the sentence could be signed Ram Sita like or Sita Ram like. It is generally found that the sentence initial argument of the verb is the subject of the sentence. A plain verb which may be ambiguous regarding subject, object and their order uses dir for disambiguation. So for example, in a sentence like Ram likes Sita, if we sign it, it would be Sita Ram like dir, which can give you the direction that it is Ram who likes Sita and not vice versa. Disambiguation may also be achieved by reference to animacy. Animates are preferentially accorded subject roles. So Ram likes a book. Here, Ram can only be the subject as it is an animate subject. The basic word order in Indian Sign Language is SOV, that is subject, object, verb. In case of sentential complementation, SV is the default order. So for example, I think Sita went home. It will be signed as I think Sita home go. A complement clause may occur to the left or the right of the matrix clause, and possible order are SVO or SOSV. The sentence is I think he is clever. This can be signed as I think he clever or he clever I think. Word order in sign languages. In continuation of our discussion on word order, we'll also explore word order in other sign languages. So Fisher in 1975 led the consensus that the basic word order in ASL is SVO. She noticed that all other orders are accompanied by non-manual markers and intonation pause, which is the result of the discourse pragmatic functions. Liddell in 1980 observes ASL displaces subject to the clause initial position, resulting SOV order. He also observes that OV S order is possible. In addition to these orders, ASL has constructions in which a verb appears twice with aspectual marker and classifier in a clause resulting SVOV. This phenomenon, as defined by Fisher and Janis in 1990, is labeled as verb sandwich because the object gets sandwiched between two verbs. It is also reported that WH questions may be doubled in ASL. The basic word order for Brazilian Sign Language is SVO. However, other permissible surface orders are determined by the verb typology, as observed by Quadros in 2003. OSV and SOV orders are allowed only with non-manual markers in agreeing verbs and in plain verbs with non-reversible arguments. The cross-sign language and cross-modality typological studies have gained important place in respect to universals and typology of human languages. The modality differences and similarities are crucial in the understanding of universal grammar. The current conceptions about the design of faculty of language as being molded by the requirements of the external performance systems have been considered to have significant impact on the overall architecture of faculty of language, as observed by Chomsky in 2000. On the basis of empirical typological studies, a journal conclusion has been that the most pervasive aspects of sign language universals are determined by the language modality itself. As Comrie said in 1981, it is conceivable that certain other universals of spoken languages might in turn correlate with properties of the medium rather than necessarily with the human linguistic faculty at a more abstract level. In this module on the syntax of sign language, we explored various phrasal and clausal constructions and the internal order of their constituents. It also provided a range of construction types and an exploration into the phenomenon of verb agreement and classifier incorporation in Indian Sign Language. The observations and results in this module on sign language hopefully laid the groundwork from which the investigations into the important questions related to deafness, Indian Sign Language, and sign linguistics can proceed further.